Arrive at the meal late? Check out previous episodes, get recipes from ingredient challenges, and see behind-the-scenes pictures at thefeedpodcast.com.
You're listening to The Feed Podcast. Get the inside scoop by following us on Twitter at The Feed Podcast.
Well, people who live in cold climates like us tend not to think about seasonal ingredients in the middle of winter, but winter citrus is a category worth talking about this time of year, right?
It certainly is, but I have no idea what you're talking about. We talk about seasonal all winter long here, and it's all of our storage crops. It's all those storage radishes and the different kinds of potatoes that we have. All those root vegetables, and then we've got amazing farmers growing incredible small greens and spinach for us all winter long. So we consider all of those things in Chicago as part of our seasonal winter stuff.
I thought this time of year was just butternut squash soup.
Well, it sort of is. But we along about April, we're so sick of the butternut and the tubers and all that sort of stuff, but still, those are our winter seasonal vegetables. And then we get the citrus, and that's what perks it all up and makes everybody really excited about spring coming.
So what is winter citrus?
Winter citrus is pretty much all citrus because that is the season when the citrus comes in. Now, some citrus will be available all year long, but again, it may be storage crops. It may have been harvested back in the winter time and then just held for us. But boy, you get the incredible variety in the middle of the winter, and that's what we're really excited about now.
I'm excited too. I'm going to learn a lot today. All right.
Okay. So coming up on today's show, a winter citrus challenge with the chef and owner of Owen and Injun here in Chicago, as both she and I attempt to come up with an easy weeknight meal in 15 minutes or less using just some citrus plus 5 extra ingredients that you can pretty much find anywhere. Stay with us.
This is The Feed Podcast. I'm Steve Dolinsky, a food and travel reporter at ABC 7 News, the Chicago Tribune, and Canada's Globe and Mail.
And I'm Rick Bayless, the chef and owner of Chicago's Frontera Grill, Topolobampo, Xoco, Leña Brava, and host of Public Television's Mexico One Plate at a Time.
And every week, The Feed takes a deep dive into the world of professional chefs, restaurateurs, food artisans, and drink experts, sharing their stories and uncovering their passion for food and drink. But that's not all. Rick and I are always traveling the globe for our jobs, eating, drinking, and immersing ourselves in the local culture. And if we find something exciting along the way, there's a good chance it's going to find its way here to our James Beard Award-winning podcast. Well, Bo Fowler emigrated from Korea and was raised in Minnesota. All right, fellow Minnesotan, where she attended the University of Minnesota and, like all future chefs, got a bachelor's degree in chemistry. She's opened 2 restaurants in Chicago, Fat Willy's Barbecue Shack, and just up the street an English gastropub called Owen and Injun, where the menu features much more than just ale and meat pies. Today she joins us here in the test kitchen to work out a main dish relying on citrus. Bo Fowler, welcome to the show.
Oh,
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's really, really great to have you here because Owen and Injun is one of my go-to places in Chicago. I think it is the best kept secret. It's not a secret for those of us in Chicago, but for people coming in from out of town, I send them there all the time because, yeah, it's sort of gastropubby, but it's always so much more than what you expect when you walk in the door. The place is just great.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, I'm super geeked out. I have been a very big fan of Rick Bayless since the first time I ever came to Chicago, which was like 24 years ago. So I am
It's not going to make him go any easier on you in the competition.
I don't expect him to.
I want to know, how do you go from a chemistry degree at the U of M to what you're doing now?
Hey, I wish I had a chemistry degree. That would actually come in very handy sometimes in the kitchen.
Well, I was taking a sabbatical. I came down here to go to medical school, and I decided that I was going to take a sabbatical. I was just didn't do quite as well as I had hoped, and I was having a kind of a midlife crisis at 25. And so I said, I'm going to take a sabbatical. And I found kitchens, and I just never kind of left. So tried to quit a few times, but once it finds you, you just get pulled back in. And so I have fully committed my life to the kitchen and to restaurants, and I would do it no other way.
Don't quit. Don't quit.
Oh, no.
We need you in Chicago.
Was there an experience you had early on, though? Like, were you working for someone and that sort of a light switch went off for you?
Honestly, yes. I started on the front of the house, and they were about to fire me. It was for the Carlucci group. I don't know if you guys...
Carlucci, yeah.
And I pretty sure they didn't say, but I heard a lot of chattering. I was a terrible front of the house person. Really not very warm and personable, and I guess apparently I have this look on my face when you were ordering things that I thought were... So I knew I was going to get fired, but they kept losing line cooks, and I kept saying, hey, I'd be willing to go, into the kitchen. So I went into the kitchen, and I got promoted pretty quickly just because this is a pretty transient business, and I was the person that was willing to work 100 hours a week. So it was really not talent, but the ability to just stick in there. So, and I just never left.
And your first place you opened, Fat Willy's, barbecue, but not Korean barbecue, sort of American Southern barbecue. And of course, you're talking to a guy here who grew up in the barbecue business. But How did you end up doing that kind of barbecue first?
Well, actually, it wasn't my first place. I had opened a place called 404 Wine Bar on Southport, and it didn't go well with my partners. And so I said to myself, I don't care what I do next, as long as I own it 100% myself. I don't care if it's a shack. So literally, that's what my parents retired in North Carolina, and we kept losing my husband to barbecue down there. So I kind of go, I own a shack, and I can probably open that up for very little money and credit cards, and that's what we did. So I always planned on opening a gastropub. That was my love and my desire. I have been a lover of all things British for a long time, just mostly through British literature, I suppose, or English literature. But so I kind of had romanticized that idea. And then, but for me, I had a strip mall. So I said, what can I do with it? So we opened up a barbecue place, which allowed me to have a business that allowed me to kind of do my dream, which was the gastropub. And I always tell my people, they're like, Chef, you're moving on to Vichy and the next place. Are you going to ever leave this kitchen? I said, no, I'm going to be the little old lady just bothering you all the time in this kitchen, because it was my dream, and I get to do what I want.
It's a dreamy place, I'll tell you that.
So midlife crisis at 25. Is there going to be a next phase for you now? You've got 2 restaurants under your belt. You said you're working out in another restaurant.
I am. I am much slower restaurateur than my idol here. We had decided to open a brewery, just as a natural extension for our gastropub, because we have obviously real ales, and we have a beautiful cicerone who does a really lovely job. And I came back from this trip from Napa, and I ate at all these amazing places, the French Laundry and all these places. But what got me was Mission Chinese. This was about 6 years ago, and I had ordered enough food for 10 people. It was just me. And I just thought, this is amazing. This is quality meats that you got from local farms. And so I remember having a ramen with Berkshire pork, and I had amazing spicy chicken wings, but not apologetic in any way. So I thought, this is an inspiration that I would like to take, because my palate runs, I think, towards Asian food, and but I didn't want to be typecast, so I never thought about making Asian food, because I grew up being adopted, and my mom would make hamburger chow mein and all these kind of crazy things, thinking she was helping me out, understand my heritage. And my dad who was German, tried to make kimchi. He's like, we can do it. I make sauerkraut all the time. So, I kind of grew up in this 2 worlds where, we had a lot of Vietnamese children too in my family, where we my parents were amazing people, and they adopted or were fostered to a lot of people, 10 children in my family. So I just kind of grew up eating, lutefisk and weird, I guess, hybrids of Asian food. But, we always, if there was a Tet festival, and we went, so we got our Asian food growing up, and my foster brothers and sisters were older too, so they cooked a lot of Vietnamese food. So I think just naturally, that's how my palate runs, is kind of like a confused Asian palate.
So the new place is going to be a brewery, but it's going to have food, and the food is going to be Asian?
It's going to be excuse me, can I say that on podcast? Yeah, it's going to be bastardized Asian food. So I didn't want to I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert in anything authentic. So it's going to have heavy influences of Asian ingredients around the world, but we will not be shy about making it pretty Americanized if we feel like it. Yeah, we're going to do a full dim sum on the weekends. And but I'm really excited to be able to do brewing that is going to match the style of food, which I plan on being much more aggressive and in the flavor profiles. And I think the gastropub will try to be far more balanced. This time we're going to try to do more fearless food. And so I'm very, very excited.
Well, we're going to see a little hint of Asian today, I think, in one of your ingredients you brought here.
Bo has accepted our challenge this week using the winter citrus as the main ingredient. She's getting set up in our test kitchen right now. And when we come back, we'll both attempt to make an easy weeknight meal in 15 minutes or less. So stay with us.
Yo.
See photos, get links to previous stories, or just let us know what you think. Contact us on our website, thefeedpodcast.com.
Have a beef with something you heard? Looking for a little extra side dish? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at The Feed Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're up here in Frontera's Test Kitchen today with Bo Fowler today, the chef and owner of Owen and Engine, as well as Fat Willy's Barbecue in Chicago. We were talking in our last segment about citrus. And do you use much citrus this time of year, Bo?
I use a lot of it because, in the winter, I'm sure Chef Bayless here understands, you have citrus and you have root vegetables. So I use a lot of both in my kitchens. We try to be...
hard to get them both in the same dish, I think, sometimes.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well,
it's like I'm in the same camp. It's like I have my citrus dishes and my root vegetables and squashes.
And
You're
so
right,
Rick's
I
going
am
to
not
explain how
combining.
this works.
Okay, so you'll have 15 minutes to complete your dish. And then you have 5 ingredients plus citrus. And we just said any kind of citrus for this particular thing. So we're not counting. It doesn't have to just be one. When they tell us to go, we'll start. And then we'll put up our dishes after 15 minutes.
All right, all set? Okay, Matt, our producer, is going to set the clock beginning now. 15 minutes begins right now. So, Bo, what did you bring? What is your citrus?
My citrus is Sanginelli blood orange, and we've got a little plain old lemons, and then I've got some sweet dandy tangerines, and I've got a Rio Star grapefruit.
A lot of citrus. Okay, and then what are your 5 things that you brought to go with that?
I got gochujang paste, which I'm going to thin out with a little bit of citrus, and then I've got some toasted hazelnuts, and I have a little tarragon, and I have salmon.
Okay, and Rick, what is your strategy?
Okay, so I am doing... I'm going to do a ceviche, a really fast ceviche. And I'm going to use a lot of lime in it because that's absolutely the defining thing. But then I'm going to add to that Caracara orange to bring out some of that beautiful complexity. Caracaras are really wonderful because there's a dark fleshed orange, and I really like it. It's not quite to the level of a blood orange, but it's moving in that direction. And I'm going to use salmon for this ceviche because I like my salmon really rare, and I only have 15 minutes, so I have to choose something that will be really good at that. So I'm just crushing the limes now between the 2 parts of a Mexican lime juicer, which will express the juice, but it'll also crush the skin so that you get all those beautiful aromatic oils.
We're going to have the recipe, by the way, on our website, thefeedpodcast.com, as well as our
I
Facebook
am
page.
using these really beautiful Barris, the regular kind of limes, but they're ones that we have picked for us. They come from a biodynamic farm in San Diego County, and they pick them for us when they're turning to yellow, because that's when I think that they're the best flavor.
Okay, and Bo, you mentioned the ingredients you've got. What are you going to be doing? What is your plan?
I am going to make a little bit of a ridiculous salad. It's going to have a little citrus vinaigrette, obviously. I'm going to do a crispy salmon skin. I was just talking to my sister, and she told me how she hates skin on fish. And I said, well, it's tough to eat if it's broiled or if it doesn't get crispy. But if it's nice and crispy, I think people will enjoy it. And that's the hardest part about this dish is just let it sit there in the pan.
Okay.
And
So far you had a little bit of, you were grating some
yeah, I'm
orange
going to
peel?
in my kitchen, I always teach not to waste anything because produce is expensive and we want to honor the farmers and I guess foragers
And you
that
work
go.
with a lot of local farms.
We
too.
do.
That's one of the reasons I love to eat at Owen and Engine.
Yeah, I think these days you just want to know how people source stuff. I am very, I used to be 200 pounds and I changed the way I eat. It's not low fat, it's not, it's just that I eat stuff that is whole foods.
So what are you doing? Can you explain what you're
I'm
doing
going
here?
to zest some of this. It's going to just go into my vinaigrette.
You've got like a zester or you've got a little grater?
Little microplane, yep.
A microplane, okay.
Yep.
And I just took out some zest and you're putting it into a container?
And then I'm going to go ahead and supreme this.
Now, when you say supreme, you need to explain what that means.
That means to take the individual segments out, but you don't have to do that at home. You can just go ahead and peel it and just slice them into rounds. I mean,
You're getting rid of all the pith and it's all just the pure
bitterness,
flesh.
right? So it's just pure flesh.
And I'm guessing Rick is doing that now too.
Yeah,
And
we're
that-
on the same trajectory here. Actually, the first thing that I'm going to do is to cut up some red onion to put in with the salmon. So the salmon is already floating free here in the lime juice, and it will start to cook a little bit on the outside. I say cook because the acid of the lime juice will do the same thing to the flesh of the fish that heat cooking would do.
You just cubed up the salmon into maybe a 1 inch or smaller pieces.
Oh no, they're
Half?
much smaller. They're actually smaller than a half an inch because I want the lime juice to really get into them and start to change their texture a little bit on the outside. But I'll of course want it to be nice and pink on the inside.
Interesting, you both are using salmon here, but very different preparations.
We both chose it, but salmon and citrus is just a great combination.
So Rick continues to chop up a red onion over there. Bo is now cutting around the blood orange and getting the supreme out, just the pure flesh of it. And you've got the salmon now in the skillet. What have you done over there? Just a little bit of oil in the skillet?
Yeah, a little bit of oil in the skillet. I scored the salmon skin, but you don't have to. If you don't score it, just put a little pressure on it for like the 50 seconds before.
Skin side down.
Skin side down. And the hardest part about doing crispy salmon is just leave it alone. Give it 5 to 7 minutes, depends on the thickness of your salmon. When you see it's about halfway, like turning lighter pink, you'll want to turn it over for a little bit.
Okay,
That's
5
it.
minutes in, so 10 minutes to go. We're a third of the way through. Rick continues to slice off around. This is the cara orange.
This is sort of the standard way that a lot of people will do those supremes that Bo was talking about, where you cut the top and bottom off of the fruit, and then you use your knife to just peel around, getting all the pith off. The pith, of course, is the part of the orange that is the most bitter. And then you use a knife. I like to do it with a chef's knife to cut in between the white segments, so you have these beautiful little supremes or pieces of completely peeled orange or whatever kind of citrus it is that you're using.
But I'm noticing a lot of this beautiful juice is going to waste on your cutting board.
I'll scrape it up.
Okay, all right, so make sure.
Yeah, I'm going to
No
put
way,
it. I'm
such
going to
good
put it
flavor
in.
there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But this is really standard, and what you'll see in our kitchen at the end of cutting all the supremes for a service is that everybody will collect the center parts, the white part of it, and just squeeze it in their hands so that they have some little juice to nourish them before service starts.
Your glass bowl sitting next to you has got all the lime juice, the little tiny pieces of salmon, the chopped red onion on top of it.
Okay, so I'm going to mix the red onion in now because I actually, for ceviche, like to let the onion sit in the lime juice a little bit because it kind of pickles the onion and it'll have a less strong flavor. Now I'm using a sweet onion here because I'm using red onion for this, but it'll be. But I'm going to mix in those onions now just to get that started.
And that flesh is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And now, Bo, what are you doing over here? You're squeezing?
I am squeezing the leftover from exactly as Rick and I are on the same page here. So I'm squeezing the leftover after I supremed them. I'm just not going to waste anything, right? So I'm going to supreme them, and then I squeeze right into this little passoire I have. to get the seeds, and then that's going to
Strainer
be
over your container.
that is, and it's going to just literally just be the base of my vinaigrette, which is just going to be.
So did you go to culinary school?
I did
Paul?
not. I learned the
You have
old
all
school.
you have all the vocabulary of somebody that went to a highfalutin culinary school.
Well, I've been in the kitchens a long time, and I really, like I said, I didn't know I wanted to make it a profession until, way late. But I watched a lot of Rick Bayless, I guess, so I picked up the terms.
So you're
Well, I
squeezing.
didn't go to culinary school either.
No, we both got
It was
fancy degrees that
Yeah,
we don't
but in
use.
different things.
I love, by the way, how beautiful all this citrus flesh is. It's just gorgeous.
Well, using these Cara oranges with the salmon, you see that they're almost exactly the same color.
We're almost halfway through. We got about 7.5 and change to go. Bo, you feeling okay?
I am.
All right,
Me too.
so just work on the vinaigrette here now. You transferred the flesh of your the tangerine and the blood orange into a little bowl, and now you're going back to your skillet. What are you looking for?
I'm just looking to see how the skin is doing. We're going to turn up the heat a little. It was a little low. And get it
Got a good amount of oil in there too.
I do. That way it gets into all the crevices, and you can guarantee that you've got a good amount. A lot of times I get young line cooks, and they go, I can't get my skin even. I say, well, that's just easy. Just put a little bit more oil so it goes above the skin a little bit. So then it gets all the cracks and crevices of that skin.
It's exactly right. And that's what I always recommend to people when they're trying to get crispy skinned salmon at home. Just put a little more oil in the pan, and it'll help the whole process.
And your piece is maybe, 3 or 4 inches square in that pan, Bo?
Yes, you can do, there's many ways to cut it. I just did kind of a 4-inch square, but you can do across if you like. I like to do 4-inch squares because I know it's a little more even that way.
One thing I'm noticing, both of you, that's very important, sharp knives are really crucial
Very.
for making supremes, yes?
You can't do it without it. You have to have a really sharp knife, or you'll just tear the
Yeah,
fruit
and
up.
Rick is using a chef's knife, but I'm just using a little kitchen petty. I just find it easier to wield around in a small kitchen.
Rick's bringing up the cilantro.
Yeah, I'm going to chop up some cilantro that's going to go into this mixture now. And then
Take this for people at home, just again, because you do this all the time, so take it for granted, but you took the sort of the tough stems off, and what are you doing?
And then I'm just really bunching up all of the cilantro stems and all the rest of it. I'm bunching them up so that they'll be all very compact, and then I'm slicing across this cilantro, making what we would call a chiffonade out of it, but a chiffonade of the leaves and the stems and everything. And the most interesting thing to me is that this looks like some sort of fancy technique that you would learn in culinary school, but even the street vendors in Mexico cut their cilantro this way. It's the standard way of cutting cilantro. It's a very, very tender leaf.
Just under 5 minutes to go. Bo's now cutting up her, is it Belgian endive?
Mm-hmm. You don't even have to cut this up if you want to. A lot of times, too, you can just cut them in half, sear them right after you're done with your salmon. But I'm just going to keep this raw today. So I'm just going to...
What are you going to add next to this?
I'm going to add a little olive oil to and some black pepper and a little bit of seasoning.
This is going into your citrus now.
Yep, into the citrus. I'm going to add a little bit of sea salt here.
Some sea salt, okay.
And I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil and mix that all up, and that is my dressing.
Rick is adding capers now to his bowl.
Kind of an interesting and unexpected thing in a ceviche, or a lot of ceviches, to put capers in them. But, it's such a common accompaniment to put with salmon. So I just thought, it'd be really fun to add that briny caper flavor in the midst of all of this. So you see that there's red onions and capers in salmon here. That sounds like something you would get in your tradition, Steve. All those things together, just put a little bit of creme fraiche there, and you're all set, right?
You got it.
So this is kind of a hybrid approach to making ceviche with flavors that we always associate with salmon.
So Bo has torn up, there's just under 4 minutes to go now, and she's turning her salmon over finally, and you can see how beautiful that skin is, evenly crispy. It's been scored. It's crispy enough for you?
No.
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 It looks great from here.
It does, but just one more minute.
1 more minute, okay. So I saw that,
Turn it up a little
Bo, I saw that you had some tarragon.
I do. Just a nice little anise hint to it. Just add some freshness. although the salad is pretty fresh as it is. So I'm just going to dress this now.
Okay, just under 3 minutes to go. Under 3 minutes, we're coming kind of into the home stretch here. You just sort of poured a little bit over your endive.
I did. I'm going to get my presentation plate here.
Okay. And Rick's got, you didn't let it sit for how long? Just a minute or so, right?
Okay, well, so this has actually been soaking in the lime juice now for about 10 minutes. So that was the first thing that I did, was to juice the limes and then put the salmon in it. So it's about 10 minutes in there, and I just tasted a piece of it. And to me, it's actually just perfect right now. If you wanted it to be a little more done, shall we say, then you would let it just sit in the lime juice for longer. You could go as much as 2 hours like that, but it'll make it sort of cooked tasting on the outside. And right now, what you get is a slight differentiation between the exterior flavor or exterior texture and the interior texture, but it's still mostly raw salmon, but I love raw salmon. So.
Okay, Bo, 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes. I saw just before you went back to the stove, you worked on your supremes, your citrus. You added some salt, pepper, the little pieces of tarragon leaves, and it looked like sugar.
Yeah, just a little bit. I didn't realize sugar was going to be here, so I just added that for a little sweetness.
We have your back here.
So now you've taken the salmon off. It is pretty dark on that one side, on the skin side.
Mm-hmm. You want it to be dark and really crispy, and I'm just going to put a little more gochujang flavor on it.
And gochujang, again, is a Korean sort of
It's a fermented wheat paste, and it has garlic in it. It's nice to have because when you're in a hurry, it has garlic, it has sesame oil, it has these things already in it if you get it prepared gochujang.
So you just brushed the cooked salmon with a little bit of that. She's now plating the endive with the vinaigrette next to it. Rick is putting his into a tall, it's almost like a martini glass.
Like a martini glass. Yeah. It's always fun to serve it that way if you're going to serve it with all the juice. This juice, because it has the sweet citrus in it, because it has the cara orange, and I put the juice from the piece of cara that I did the supremes from. So it's got a sweet note to it. You could even add a touch of sugar if you wanted to bring that part out, but I didn't have to because it's very sweet tart at the same time.
30 seconds to go. Rick is just adding a little bit of cilantro garnish to the top. Bo is taking some of her hazelnuts. Did you toast those hazelnuts first?
I did. Okay. I know you can't get them
toast
in the grocery store.
To the top of your salad. And we're pretty much at time, folks. These are both delicious looking. And I love the colors. And I love how you both had salmon kind of as the basis for this, but totally different dishes.
We don't talk about this beforehand. We just say you have to do something with citrus. And here we both prepared a dish with salmon and citrus.
Well, we're going to take some pictures here. We're going to take some pictures for our Instagram and our Facebook, of course, the Feed Podcast. Recipes are going to be on thefeedpodcast.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to taste what Bo and Rick have made. We're going to have some scenes from next week's show as well, so stay with us.
Podcast. To get your weekly fix, subscribe to us on iTunes or visit our website, thefeedpodcast.com.
Still not full? Feast on the photos, recipes, and be a part of the conversation at facebook.com/thefeedpodcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here in Frontera's Test Kitchen with Bo Fowler today, chef and owner of Owen and Engine in Chicago. And we were talking about citrus. That's the challenge today. How do you use something with citrus as the star plus 5 other easy-to-find ingredients and get a main dish on the table in 15 minutes or less? Bo, how would you describe this dish? What is this called?
It's crispy salmon with gochujang, and you've got a citrus salad with endive, hazelnuts, and tarragon. That's it.
I cannot do this in 15 minutes, but okay. We're going to taste this. It's a gorgeous dish. You've got to look on our website or our Facebook to see the pictures of this. The citrus with the hazelnuts and the little bits of tarragon in there just looks delightful. And then you've got this great piece of sort of 4x4 salmon with the crispy skin on the one side of it that you served up, right? The skin side up.
Skin side up, yes. Just because you want to feature the crispiness on it.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I did it kind of medium, but in the restaurant we'll do mid-rare. But at home, if you just want to throw it in the oven for a couple minutes too, you can do that and get it to mid-well if you like.
Oh, no. Don't do that.
I know, I don't recommend it, but I know people are going to, so I'm going to tell them how to do it without burning
the
it.
first one, since I've already tasted a little bit of this. Man, the salmon skin is so great. I'm so glad you went back and you kept checking on it. You weren't happy the first time around. You definitely got it crispy. Gives it such great texture, but the brightness, the acidity from that salad just wakes everything up. It puts you in a warmer climate kind of mood, actually. Yeah. And a little bit of sort of toasted hazelnut in there gives it a little bit of toastiness and nuttiness as a contrast.
What I really love is the bitterness from the endive against the sweetness of all that gorgeous citrus.
Yeah, that's a great combo. I mean, you need something bitter like that to balance it, don't you think?
You do. Yeah. If
Would
it
you do
was
radicchio?
just citrus, yeah, you could use radicchio, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had to remove the radicchio from my 5-ingredient list this morning because I counted it was, more than 5.
That is a super simple salad. I didn't realize how easy that was going to be.
Yeah, super easy. Hardest part will be your salmon, but just 5 minutes on one side and a few on the other. So pretty easy.
Important to know,
weeknight.
not blazing high hot heat for that salmon. A lot of people just crank the heat all the way up. You had it kind of going medium.
I did. You can crank it to medium high. I mean, when you first start out, and then just lower it a little bit. You want that first kind of sizzle and set the skin a little. Not my stove, so I didn't really realize, the temp on it. But so you definitely want to start out a little high, lower it, and let it just go, and render out the fat.
That truly is a dish of contrasts. Okay, now we're going to move on to the ceviche. This is Rick's ceviche.
Right, here's the ceviche with its capers and its red onion, cilantro. It's just a very light and simple thing. No chili in it at all. It just is really celebrating the citrus that's in there. And the Cara oranges, I think, are beautifully sweet and deep and rich and kind of complex tasting.
It's so interesting you were alluding to earlier that it is kind of like that combination of salmon and capers and onions is a thing I think of if you're making lox.
Right.
This is a totally different preparation. That citrus, though, I mean, it just, my whole mouth has awoken from that beautiful brightness.
Yes, I think we're all chowing down. We've got our mouths full of chips here, so it's hard to talk.
But you've got to serve it with, it's good to have it with the corn chips as well.
I think it is to do tortilla chips, but to tell you the truth, in Mexico, lots of times they'll put out saltine crackers with ceviche. And I think anything that's crispy and salty is a great foil to ceviche.
As you pointed out, though, if you let this sit for too long, an hour or two, that texture is really going to change for the salmon. The texture right now is ideal.
Don't you think? I mean, you really do get a little bit of a cooked texture on the outside, and then it just melts into that beautiful salmon, almost raw in the middle. But I think it's really delicious when it's done that way. So I always suggest to people, if you're going to make this, just make it, if you're going to do it for guests or whatever, just have all of the chopping done and everything and just put it together when your guests arrive, let it set for its 15 minutes and then serve it.
I think that's a great way to do it. We'll make sure those notes are in our website, the recipe on our website, which of course is thefeedpodcast.com. But we want to thank Bo Fowler for coming today from Owen and Engine and Fat Willie's Barbecue Shack. Thanks, Bo.
This has been so fabulous.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an honor.
Great seeing you here, and thanks for coming again. Okay, coming up next week, the art of service and hospitality told from an expert's perspective.
And so you got to make sure you have it buttoned up a little bit, have the smile on, and just, because you want them to feel like you're welcoming them into your home. You don't want, if you have this kind of grumpy-esque about you, they're going to be like, maybe I should go down the street and have a cocktail there. It doesn't feel as warm and as cozy.
We'll learn how service is taught and trained from the perspective of a successful restaurant group owner, a bar manager, and a floor captain at one of the world's best restaurants. That's next week on the show.
Remember, you can always contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Feed Podcast, or check out our ingredient challenge challenges, get recipes, and other information about previous shows by simply visiting our website, thefeedpodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. Be sure to follow me at Rick_Bayless.
And I'm at Steve Dolinsky with a Y. More information about both Bo and Rick's recipes using winter citrus on our website as well. Linnea Dominic's our production assistant. Max Dolinsky supervised today's music. Bureaucratic wrote and performed our theme song. And the Feed Podcast is edited by Matt Cunningham at Truthful Enthusiasm. Whether you're an individual or institution, get your story online with truthfulenthusiasm.com. Thanks for listening, everybody.